God-level duplication system. Chapter 101. Admit defeat. Because the strength that Lin Xuan had just displayed had already surpassed theirs. Even though they were all condensation spin stage peak warriors, their cultivation base was far higher than Lin Xuan's. However, they had already reached middle age and their potential had been exhausted. They couldn't even compare to Li Quan, who was a condensation spin stage level 8 warrior. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, instantly defeated Li Quan. Naturally, they weren't a match for Lin Xuan either. While they were in shock, they were also filled with respect. The deacons also sighed in their hearts. They had never thought that Lin Xuan, who had only broken through to the beginner level in less than 2 months, had already surpassed the deacons of the inner sect, who had been cultivating for dozens of years. He was indeed worthy of being called the number one genius of the sect. His talent in martial arts was just too amazing. He had once again broken the sect's record. On the arena, Lin Xuan looked at the attribute panel in the void in front of him. He looked at the increasing energy points and nodded slightly. This time, he had earned a lot of energy points. He had also earned 30,000 contribution points. Next, he might be able to earn another round in the gambling arena. After that, Lin Xuan looked to the side of the arena, wanting the referee to announce the result. However, he was stunned. At this moment, he was the only one left in the arena. Even the referee was gone. On the square, the referee also smiled awkwardly. Just now, when Lin Xuan and Li Quan were fighting on the arena, the airwave that erupted almost caused him to suffer internal injuries. He was greatly shocked, and he couldn't help but feel a bit frightened. In order to avoid harm from the impact, he jumped off the arena. However, Lin Xuan easily knocked Li Quan off the stage. Li Quan did not have the strength to resist. Seeing Lin Xuan's gaze sweep over, the referee hurriedly went up the stage and announced loudly, "This gambling match, Lin Xuan wins." The referee's words spread across the entire gambling arena. Only now has everyone on the scene truly reacted. They were in an uproar, sighing with emotion. Lin Xuan's talent and strength astounded them all. Lin Xuan also used this chance to harvest a lot of energy points. After the announcement, the judge looked at Lin Xuan again. He said to Lin Xuan, do you want to defend the arena? No need. Lin Xuan shook his head and threw his identity token to the deacon beside the arena. Seeing this, Li Quan took the initiative to walk over and hand over the identity token. He allowed the deacon to transfer 30,000 contribution points to Lin Xuan. Although his heart ached a little, this was the sect's rule. Not to mention that he was just an elite disciple of the inner sect, even a true disciple had to be willing to admit defeat. Also, he didn't want to offend Lin Xuan, who had boundless potential, just for this small amount of contribution points. Therefore, he simply handed over the bet. After that, the deacon threw the identity token that he had received back to Lin Xuan. After Lin Xuan received it, he jumped off the arena. Everyone's eyes were focused on Lin Xuan. Many people moved in the direction where Lin Xuan was heading and made way for him. They thought that Lin Xuan was leaving. Unexpectedly, Lin Xuan did not leave. He moved in the direction of the fourth combat ring, which had an accomplished inner sect warrior on duty. He jumped onto the combat ring and bowed. I am Lin Xuan, an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. I would like to challenge you. Senior brother Joe, can you accept the challenge? In fact, this was just a polite greeting. Since he had chosen to defend the ring, he had to accept Lin Xuan's challenge. Otherwise, he would have to give up on defending the arena before the next challenge. Everyone present was stunned when they saw this. They at once reacted with strange expressions. What was Lin Xuan doing? Although Zhou Feiying was also a condensation spin stage 8 player, his strength couldn't be compared to Li Quan's. Lin Xuan defeated Li Quan in a flash. Why was Lin Xuan here to challenge Zhou Feiying? This was the result of a guaranteed victory. Was Lin Xuan looking for trouble? Everyone was puzzled. Soon, some disciples of the inner sect understood what was going on. The bet that Zhou Feiying made must have caught Lin Xuan's attention. Although Lin Xuan's talent was extremely high, he was called the number one person in the Drifting Cloud sect. However, his cultivation base wasn't high, he was just an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. The resources distributed to him by the sect were limited. The higher his cultivation talent was, the stronger his strength would be and the more resources he needed. Lin Xuan's talent was so high that almost no one in the entire Drifting Cloud sect could compare to him. The cultivation resources he needed were, naturally, enormous. This might even be several times greater than that of his peers. The resources given to him by the sect were far from enough. Regarding this, Lin Xuan could only think of his own way. In the Drifting Cloud sect, as long as he was strong, he would have many ways to earn cultivation resources. But among them, the simplest one seemed to be the gambling arena. As long as he went to the arena to challenge others or waited for others to challenge him, he would be rewarded after winning. Of course, he had to be strong enough and unbeatable by others. Thinking of this, many disciples of the inner sect had a look of enlightenment in their eyes. No wonder Lin Xuan came to the gambling arena a few days after entering the inner sect. He had even provoked others, causing many challenges. He had even challenged the elites of the inner sect. If he was trying to earn cultivation resources, everything made sense. Lin Xuan's current actions were understandable. As for what the disciples of the inner sect could think of, Zhou Feiying, who was an elite disciple of the inner sect, naturally understood what was going on. He couldn't help but reveal a bitter smile. He never thought that he would one day become someone else's tool to earn cultivation resources. But as Arena Lord, he could not refuse Lin Xuan. He could only brace himself and say, "Senior brother Lin, you are very strong. I know I am not your match. I admit defeat." After saying that, he threw the identity token to the deacon at the side. Even if he admitted defeat, he still had to hand over the bet. This was the rule of the gambling arena. When everyone heard Zhou Feiying's words, they were all stunned. Immediately, their expressions changed to disbelief. An ordinary disciple of the inner sect challenged the elite disciple, and the latter even admitted defeat. This was something that had never happened before in the entire inner sect. They couldn't believe it, and they couldn't accept it even after half a day. On the other hand, Zhou Feiying let out a long breath after saying this. He seemed to be much more relaxed. Even though Lin Xuan wasn't even close to being a match for Li Quan, he still defeated Li Quan. If he really fought Lin Xuan, he probably would not be able to last more than one move and would be defeated. That would be completely humiliating himself. Rather than that, he might as well just admit defeat and save some face. After all, Lin Xuan defeated Li Quan, so admitting defeat wasn't a big deal. When the others understood what was going on, they would understand him as well. What Lin Xuan wanted to challenge were the contribution points and the cultivation resources. Then he would give it to him. He could also express his attitude and make friends with Lin Xuan. He wanted to curry favor with a genius like Lin Xuan. Therefore, the first thing he did was to admit defeat without any psychological burden. When Lin Xuan heard this, he was also stunned. He at once reacted and nodded with a faint smile in his eyes. After which, he turned around and threw his identity token to a deacon beside the arena. This was the best result. He could get what he wanted. Lin Xuan naturally had no reason to reject him, so he didn't say anything. Chapter 102. Expert on the Strong List. After that, the judge returned the identity token to Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan took the token and walked to the next arena, guarded by the elite warriors of the inner sect under the watchful eyes of everyone present. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They had never thought that the situation would turn out like this. The gambling arena, which was originally used to sharpen combat strength, seemed to have become a place where Lin Xuan could earn contribution points. This was extremely strange. All the disciples were at a loss for words. In the 5 arenas, the strongest elite disciple of the inner sect was actually Li Quan. However, Lin Xuan quickly defeated Li Quan. The rest of them were no match for Lin Xuan. With the example of Zhou Feiying in front of them, they felt that admitting defeat was not a big deal. Therefore, the others took the initiative to admit defeat when Lin Xuan challenged them in the arena. In the end, on the 5 arenas other than the 2 arenas that were still fighting, the elites of the inner sect who were guarding the other 5 arenas either admitted defeat or were defeated by Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan also used this chance to obtain 60,000 contribution points. In addition, he also obtained quite a number of energy points. Lin Xuan was also quite satisfied. After putting away his identity token, He was about to jump off the arena and leave. Everyone's eyes were still focused on Lin Xuan. Among them were a lot of the inner sex elites. The elites of the inner sect looked at Lin Xuan's performance with gloomy expressions. Originally, the purpose of this group of inner sex elites coming to gambling arena was to attract Lin Xuan to challenge them. They wanted to use this opportunity to defeat Lin Xuan and help the inner sex elites regain their face. In the end, Lin Xuan really came, and he took part in the competition as an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. However, no one was a match for Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan easily defeated Li Quan, the top expert of the inner sect, in just 2 moves. The other 2 even admitted defeat. With Lin Xuan's combat strength, none of the elites of the inner sect were a match for him. This time, not only did they not regain their face, but they also even lost all their face. From today onwards, the entire inner sex elites would be ridiculed endlessly. How could they have any good expressions? However, they were afraid of Lin Xuan's formidable strength, so they could only bear with it. No one dared to challenge him. They could only watch helplessly as Lin Xuan left after obtaining tens of thousands of contribution points. On the arena, Lin Xuan also put his identity token into the storage ring. He walked to the edge of the arena and prepared to jump down and leave. But at this moment, an inharmonious, cold shout sounded. "Wait, I want to challenge you." This sound exploded in the gambling arena like a clap of thunder. Almost everyone's heart trembled. They looked towards the source of the sound. They saw a handsome young man in a black robe walking towards them. Although he didn't emit any chi, it seemed as if he had an invisible chi field that pushed all the disciples of the inner sect to the sides. Even some of the late condensation spin stage elites were no exception. When the disciples saw the face of this black-robed youth, their faces froze and their pupils shrank. The scene instantly became silent. However, in the next moment, it was as if an explosion had erupted and the sound waves soared into the sky. Do I see things? It's actually senior brother strong list Hu Yuanhua. That Hu Yuanhua who is ranked 28th in the strong list. Is this for real? That's right, he is senior brother Hu. I never thought that senior brother Hu would come to the gambling arena. That's right. The majority of the disciples in gambling arena are ordinary disciples of the inner sect. It has been a few days since some of the elite disciples of the inner sect arrived. Senior disciple strong list has never been here before. Perhaps Lin Xuan's most powerful aura is too strong. Even senior disciple strong list can't stand him anymore. Didn't you hear what he said just now? Senior brother who wants to challenge Lin Xuan. If that's the case, it's likely. Now, Lin Xuan is going to lose. Lin Xuan has been advancing by leaps and bounds ever since he broke through to the beginner level, and his progress is astonishing. Now, he has even been praised as the number 1 genius of the sect, and his fame is just too great. Even if he wasn't as good as his successor brother, he wouldn't be too far off from him. Many people don't like him. Lin Xuan has only been at the beginner level for less than 2 months, and his cultivation time is still short. Even if his talent is extremely high, he can't possibly be a match for senior brother Hu is ranked on the strong list, right? His undefeated record is going to be broken. All the disciples were discussing amongst themselves, and it was extremely noisy. The arrival of Hu Yuanhua, who was on the strong list, shocked everyone. At the same time, they were also gloating and mocking Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's performance during the past month has created countless records. At this point, he had almost surpassed the entire younger generation of the sect. Lin Xuan shocked these veteran, novice disciples, but at the same time, he also suppressed them so severely that they were unable to breathe. Every time they thought of Lin Xuan, a sense of powerlessness would surge out of their hearts. Compared to Lin Xuan, these so-called geniuses had become incomparably ordinary. Therefore, they hoped that someone could defeat Lin Xuan. Even if it was only once. If Lin Xuan lost, he would no longer be as glorious as before. They could also feel better. This was the reason why all the disciples had such a change in attitude. But things might not develop as they expected. How could it be so easy to make Lin Xuan lose? Then under everyone's gaze, the black-robed young man, Hu Yuanhua, jumped onto the arena and faced Lin Xuan from afar. How is it? Junior brother Lin, do you dare accept my challenge? Hu Yuanhua said it coldly. Sure. Lin Xuan also looked over, his gaze was solemn. Name: Hu Yuanhua. Cultivation: condensation spin stage peak. Talent: superior grade cultivation talent, top grade strength talent, top grade speed talent, top grade saber talent, and top grade crimson fire talent. Top grade violent wind attribute talent, mid grade earth talent, mid grade sharp gold talent, martial skill. Crimson Flame Formula, low rank 6, small completion, Flaming Burning Saber Technique, rank 5, top grade. Great completion, Fire Feather Fist, rank 5, top grade. Great completion, Void Splitting First, rank 5, top grade. Great completion, Raging Flame Palm, rank 5, top grade. Great completion. Concept: half incomplete saber intent, 10% artistic conception of fire. Treasure: Green Flame Blade, low rank 6 spirit weapon. Lin Xuan looked at Hu Yuanhua's attribute panel, and his eyes lit up. No wonder he was a strong list warrior. He was indeed much stronger than the other disciples of the inner sect. Even Li Quan, an elite disciple of the inner sect, was slightly weaker than Hu Yuanhua. More importantly, there was a treasure in Hu Yuanhua's attribute panel that he was interested in. Lin Xuan thought for a moment. You have consumed 10,000 energy points and successfully duplicated them. You have obtained the 10% artistic conception of fire. Immediately, he duplicated the artistic conception of fire. He would use it when he returned. As for Hu Yuanhua's other aspects, he was far superior to almost everyone present. But Lin Xuan still looked down on them. And all of this, Lin Xuan completed in less than a breath's time. No one on the scene could detect his actions. Lin Xuan looked at Hu Yuanhua and continued. Senior brother Hu, it is my honor to have you challenge me. But is this a bet that needs to be discussed? Chapter 103. Plan. 50,000 contribution points. Before Lin Xuan could finish his words, Hu Yuanhua interrupted him. With a cold expression, he made a bet. This was not a small bet. Even though he was an elite disciple, these contribution slips were still a lot to him. However, in order to get Lin Xuan to accept his challenge, this wasn't a big deal. Everyone in the Drifting Cloud sect knew how great Lin Xuan's potential was. He was even faintly known as the number 1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect. It could be said that he would become a true disciple in the future, and it wouldn't be difficult for him to become one of the top figures in the sect in the future. Hu Yuanhua had already predicted this. Furthermore, with Lin Xuan's cultivation speed, it wouldn't take him long to reach this goal, and it would take him at most a few years. However, it was precisely because of this that he took the initiative to challenge Lin Xuan. Lin Xuan's talent was shockingly high, and it was inevitable that he would become a mighty warrior of Scorching Sun domain in the future. However, if Lin Xuan, who was so brilliant, lost to him and suffered such a defeat, it would be a stain on Lin Xuan. When others mentioned Lin Xuan, they would also think of him. However, this was the complete opposite for him. It would be beneficial to him. He wanted to use Lin Xuan to achieve the effect of making a name for himself. The greater Lin Xuan's achievements in the future, the wider his reputation will spread. He could also use this opportunity to obtain more benefits and advance on the road of martial arts. This was his plan. Although as a condensation spin stage elite disciple, it was a bit unfair for him to challenge an ordinary disciple of the inner sect, Lin Xuan. However, thanks to Lin Xuan's performance, he was able to defeat Li Quan, the top expert of the inner sect, in a flash. Who would dare to treat Lin Xuan as an ordinary disciple of the inner sect? The other people would believe that he had defeated Lin Xuan, the greatest genius, when he did. Lin Xuan's reputation had fallen, and he had stepped on Lin Xuan to rise to fame. No one would think that an elite disciple of the inner sect had defeated an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. This was because Lin Xuan was just too amazing and had reached a frightening level. This had concealed his true identity. Lin Xuan was so tightly controlling the sect's geniuses that they were not even able to breathe. They were also looking forward to Lin Xuan's defeat. His action just so happened to be in line with the thoughts of most of the disciples in the sect. Of course, no one would gossip about him. On the contrary, countless people would applaud and cheer for him. When Hu Yuanhua thought of this, his eyes were filled with anticipation as he looked at Lin Xuan. He hoped that Lin Xuan would agree to his challenge. Unfortunately, Lin Xuan wasn't that stupid. His craftiness was not much worse than that of those old men. When Lin Xuan heard this, his brows furrowed. He didn't reply at once. There really is a strong list expert who wants to challenge me. He even took out a bet of 50,000 contribution points at once. This is interesting. Lin Xuan looked at Hu Yuanhua, his eyes flashing. At this point, he had already seen through his trick. Immediately, Lin Xuan's eye swept across the disciples in the square below. He saw many gloating expressions on their faces. Suddenly, Lin Xuan realized something. So that's how it was. Hu Yuanhua wanted to use his current fame to get to the top. He was indeed shining brightly now, attracting the jealousy and hatred of many people in the dark. But not everyone could defeat him. Lin Xuan's eyes were filled with anger. Since he dared to plot against him, don't blame him for being impolite. However, Lin Xuan still had a calm expression on his face. He shook his head and said, "Senior brother Li, you are a strong list expert. How dare you take out 50,000 contribution points? Furthermore, I am taking such a huge risk. How about this? 80,000 contribution points." After Lin Xuan finished speaking, the scene turned silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. They stared at Lin Xuan in disbelief. Did they hear it wrong? Lin Xuan had actually asked for a bet of 80,000 contribution points. They didn't dare to imagine 50,000 contribution points, as it was the highest bet in the entire gambling arena so far. Lin Xuan actually asked for 80,000. He must have gone crazy thinking about money, right? Who would agree with him? Many disciples felt that Lin Xuan had lost his mind. 80,000 contribution points was a huge sum for strong list warriors. This was unimaginable for the elites of the inner sect and ordinary disciples of the inner sect. Lin Xuan wasn't worried about the consequences of his defeat. With Lin Xuan's status as an ordinary disciple of the inner sect, even if his talent was extraordinary, he wouldn't be able to take out so many contribution points. Or did he think that he could defeat a strong list expert like Hu Yuanhua? All the disciples were shocked and puzzled. On the arena, Lin Xuan remained unmoved. He was confident that Hu Yuanhua would agree to his request, as long as his guess was correct. Sure enough, after a slight struggle and hesitation, Hu Yuanhua nodded his head heavily. "All right. I promise you. Since you dare to bet so much, I'm even more curious about your strength." After saying that, Hu Yuanhua's expression turned into a cold smile. These 80,000 contribution points were almost all the savings he had right now. If he lost, he would have to leave the Drifting Cloud sect for the next few months to carry out missions and hunt demon beasts. However, if he won, not only would he not lose anything, but he would also gain 80,000 contribution points. More importantly, with the help of Lin Xuan's fame, he would be able to advance further. In the future, he would gain many benefits. Comparing them, he still made a choice. He was a condensation spin stage peak strong list, and he had killed many ordinary condensation spin stage peak warriors in seconds. Could it be that he couldn't defeat an ordinary disciple of the inner sect who was only a beginner-level warrior for less than 2 months? When the disciples heard this, they were dumbfounded once again. They never thought that Hu Yuanhua would actually agree to such a ridiculous bet. Immediately, they recovered from their shock and looked forward to it even more. With 80,000 contribution points as the bet, the competition would be even more exciting. They couldn't afford to miss it. In the arena, Lin Xuan heard it and smiled. However, the coldness in the depths of his eyes became even stronger. He looked at the judge beside him. When the referee saw this, he walked to the center of the arena with a solemn expression and announced loudly, "The bet begins." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left quickly, leaping off the arena. Although Lin Xuan was a new disciple, his strength was at least at the condensation spin stage peak. Hu Yuanhua was also a strong list expert. He could instantly kill an ordinary condensation spin stage peak. In a battle like this, the aftermath of the explosion was extremely powerful. Although he was also a condensation spin stage peak warrior, he might not be able to withstand it. It was better for him to stay away from it. If he didn't see an exciting battle and got injured instead, it would be a huge loss for him. When the crowd of disciples saw the referee's actions, they at once understood what was going on. They hurriedly flew backwards. They only stopped when they were outside the square. When the managers around the ring saw this, their expressions changed slightly as well, revealing bitter smiles in their eyes. They did not expect that there would be such a commotion before the battle between the two junior disciples had even begun. Immediately, they placed the tables, chairs, books, and the rest into the storage ring. They followed the disciples and withdrew to the outside of the square. Chapter 104. Crushing Sabre Light. The square is silent. The square was empty. Everyone's eyes were focused on the ring, looking forward to the next match. On the ring, Lin Xuan's expression was indifferent as he looked at Hu Yuanhua. This time, he did not only want to defeat Hu Yuanhua. He also wanted to make use of this opportunity to increase his reputation and earn a large amount of energy points. He couldn't kill his opponent in an instant. Although he could do it, this effect wasn't enough. Perhaps the other disciples would think that it was a sneak attack. He planned to wait for Hu Yuanhua to use his full strength before easily defeating him. Only then could he maximize his gains. Therefore, Lin Xuan didn't attack. Instead, he waited quietly for Hu Yuanhua to make his move. Opposite him, Hu Yuanhua looked at Lin Xuan. His expression was solemn, and he didn't dare to be careless. Although he was very confident in himself, Lin Xuan's reputation was just too great, and he didn't have 100% confidence in himself. Furthermore, Lin Xuan was just an ordinary disciple of the inner sect, and it seemed like he was bullying the weak. If he couldn't win, he wouldn't just lose 80,000 contribution points and his reputation. Everyone would laugh at him. Therefore, he couldn't lose this battle. To be more precise, he could not afford to lose. Thinking of this, Hu Yuanhua's eyes turned firm. He ignored Lin Xuan's attitude and picked up the green flame blade. Immediately, Hu Yuanhua shouted loudly and waved the green flame blade with force. Burning heaven, burning flame. The blade light slashed across the void and turned into a scarlet-red blade light. Scorching flames surrounded his body, and his body enlarged. In an instant, he became dozens of meters tall. He descended from the sky and crushed Lin Xuan. Horrifying flames spread in all directions, and the temperature of the entire gambling arena skyrocketed. Even the disciples and deacons outside the square felt their mouths go dry, and their hearts were trembling. Hu Yuanhua looked at Lin Xuan solemnly. He had already used all of his strength. It could be said that besides the elite disciples and warriors, no one in the inner sect could resist this attack. He planned to use this skill to test Lin Xuan. It would be best if he could defeat Lin Xuan. If he couldn't defeat Lin Xuan, he could only use his trump card. In short, he couldn't lose this battle. On the other side, Lin Xuan's expression was calm. Even when the terrifying flame blade descended, he didn't panic at all. After that, Lin Xuan attacked. His right hand slowly extended upward. This time, Lin Xuan used his palm to block the saber light, just like he had dealt with Li Quan. He still did not activate the true qi, nor did he circulate his martial arts. The disciples and deacons of the inner sect outside the square were dumbfounded once again. They couldn't believe it. None of the condensation spin stage peak deacons were able to withstand this attack. This was far from what Li Quan's earlier punch could compare with. But even so, Lin Xuan still chose to use his palm to block it. Did he not want to live anymore? Or did Lin Xuan think that he was very strong after defeating Li Quan? Everyone was incomparably shocked. Some felt puzzled, some sneered, and some mocked Lin Xuan. On the arena, Hu Yuanhua was also very shocked. He had also watched Lin Xuan's earlier battle. He was astounded by Lin Xuan's strength and physique. At least he was not as strong as Lin Xuan. However, he didn't expect Lin Xuan to have the same attitude when facing his attack. This slash of his could instantly kill Li Quan. He was on a completely different level from Li Quan. However, Lin Xuan's way of treating him didn't change. Was he confident or conceited? Hu Yuanhua did not know the answer. He realized that this was a good opportunity for him to defeat Lin Xuan when he was astounded by Lin Xuan's bravado. Lin Xuan did not use any martial arts, nor did he use his true qi. At this moment, he was only using his physical strength. He had yet to use his full strength. This was a great opportunity. If he could defeat Lin Xuan this time, he wouldn't need to waste any more time in the future. At the same time, he would obtain even more benefits. After all, this was equivalent to killing a person in an instant. The shock it brought was even greater. Immediately, Hu Yuanhua made a decision. The true chi surged out crazily, and his strength increased by another 30%. The power of the flame that fell from the sky increased once again. In the next moment, under the eyes of everyone present, the huge flame blade beam that was over 30 meters long struck Lin Xuan's white palm with a loud bang. The fierce wind, which was wrapped in a frightening heat wave, spread out in all directions. The temperature of the gambling arena increased once again. Even if a condensation spin stage warrior was standing on gambling arena, he probably wouldn't be able to withstand this force. His vitality and true chi would burn. But strangely, there wasn't the slightest sound of an explosion or the sound of blood splashing out. When everyone managed to barely resist the shock wave, they looked over. Instantly, they stood there with their eyes wide open. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. What did they see? Lin Xuan actually used his palm to catch the terrifying flame blade of Hu Yuanhua. On the arena, the huge flaming blade light actually stopped in midair. A white palm blocked it. The scorching heat wave swept across the surroundings, but it was unable to leave even the slightest trace on this white palm. Such a shocking scene stunned everyone present. They were stunned on the spot. Even Hu Yuanhua, who was on the other side of the arena, widened his eyes in disbelief. However, Lin Xuan still had an indifferent expression on his face. You can defeat me with this kind of power? Then you are looking down on me. Lin Xuan shook his head and said, then he clenched his right hand. Everyone heard a series of crisp sounds. Several cracks began to spread upward from Lin Xuan's palm. In the blink of an eye, the cracks covered the entire flaming blade light. Then a loud explosion rang out. That shockingly powerful flaming blade light actually exploded like a thin and crispy biscuit. It transformed into countless waves of fire that scattered in all directions. The disciples and deacons outside the square could only feel that the vitality and true chi were boiling hot as if they were going to burn at any time. They were very shocked. They were so scared that they retreated once again. They retreated another 100 meters before feeling better. When they looked at the stage, they were even more shocked. They were outside the gambling arena square, but they couldn't even withstand the aftershocks of the flame blade. It could be seen how powerful it was. It had already surpassed an ordinary condensation spin stage peak. However, Lin Xuan was standing in the center, but he still crushed the flaming blade light. In comparison, Lin Xuan's strength was even more terrifying. All the disciples and deacons were shocked to the extreme. Chapter 105. Outstanding Strength. On the stage, Lin Xuan still had a calm expression on his face, but there was a flash of light in his eyes as he slightly nodded his head. Sure enough, the power of the golden scale barbaric elephant arts did not disappoint him. Even many condensation spin stage peak warriors couldn't withstand Hu Yuanhua's blade light. However, after forcefully using his palm to withstand it, not only did he not feel any pain, but he also didn't even leave a trace behind. In comparison, he was indeed very powerful. This level of defense had already exceeded the realm of the condensation spin stage. It was estimated that only those who were at least at the spirit opening stage or above would be able to break through it. But at this moment, he hadn't even reached the beginner level. This showed how extraordinary the golden scale barbaric elephant arts were. This also strengthened Lin Xuan's belief in learning this martial art. He had already tried the strength of his defense. Now it was time to test its strength. After that, Lin Xuan looked at Hu Yuanhua and clenched his fists, waiting for his attack. On the opposite side, Hu Yuanhua's expression was awkward, and his heart was heavy. He knew that Lin Xuan could take his attack. But he didn't think that he would be able to take it so easily. Without activating the true chi and martial arts, he forcefully used his palm to receive his attack. The strength of his physique was simply shocking. Perhaps there weren't many people on the strong list that could compare to him, right? It seemed like he had underestimated Lin Xuan. This bet was even more difficult. Lin Xuan's strength might be far stronger than he had imagined. However, he couldn't lose. Once he lost, he would end up in a miserable state. When Hu Yuanhua thought of this, he became determined. Next, he couldn't hold back anymore. He should use all his strength. He only wanted to defeat Lin Xuan. After that, Hu Yuanhua shouted in a cold voice. Lin Xuan, you are very strong. But I don't only have this little trick. Take this. As soon as he finished speaking, a scorching aura and an unparalleled sharpness radiated from Hua's body. This was 10% of the half-incomplete Sabre intent, the artistic conception of fire. They were the only concepts in Hua's body. In order to defeat Lin Xuan, Hua used all of his trump cards. He didn't hold anything back. These two excellent ideas caused distorted ripples to surround the gambling arena. It was as if even the spatial zone couldn't withstand this kind of strength. The disciples and deacons of the inner sect outside the square felt a deadly threat coming at them. They were so scared that they kept retreating and only stopped after retreating a few hundred meters away. They looked in the direction of the arena with even more shock and anticipation. He had even used two great concepts. It wasn't hard for them to imagine how intense and wonderful the next match would be. They were naturally looking forward to it. At the same time, they were also prepared to escape at any time. He was only using two great concepts right now. He had already obtained this kind of power before the battle even started. When the intense battle started, even the power he sent out would be unbearable to them. They still had to make some preparations. Otherwise, it would be too late if they were injured at that time. On the arena, after Hua activated the two great concepts, the temperature within a radius of several hundred meters rose explosively. The air was boiling hot, and there was also a large amount of sharpness mixed within. 1. Those condensation spin stage peak warriors couldn't even hold on for a while. However, Lin Xuan had a calm expression on his face, and he didn't feel anything. Lin Xuan didn't even need to activate his true chi or concept to defend against his attack. He was fine, just relying on his current physical strength. However, since he had already used the two great concepts, Lin Xuan naturally looked forward to his next attack. On the opposite side, Hua's mood became even heavier when he saw Lin Xuan being so casual and indifferent while being enveloped by the two great concepts. Especially at this moment, Lin Xuan was still standing where he was without even taking out his sword. He remembered that according to the rumors about Lin Xuan, the kendo that he was stronger than him was the 10% sword intent that he had understood. His sword technique was unstoppable. In the end, Lin Xuan's sword technique was able to defeat the majority of his earlier opponents. After fighting with Lin Xuan for a while, he naturally knew that the rumors were true. He regretted looking down on him. However, looking at Lin Xuan's attitude, it seemed like he did not intend to use his sword technique. Could it be that, until now, Lin Xuan still hadn't displayed his true strength? If that were the case, then wouldn't he be too terrifying? The strength that Lin Xuan had displayed earlier had already surpassed the elites of the inner sect and was now ranked in the strong list. But Lin Xuan was only a 7th level chi transformation stage warrior. But even so, if he didn't use all of his strength, then he would be too powerful. Hua didn't dare to continue imagining it. He could only fight with all his strength. As for whether he could win or not, it would depend on heaven's will. After that, Hua stopped thinking about it. He took a deep breath and shouted in a low voice. Burning fire. His true chi surged wildly as he used two large concepts to slash out. A scarlet red dot that was like a starfire flew out. In the next moment, this scarlet red dot spread out in all directions at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the entire gambling arena had turned into a sea of red flames. In the sea of flames, countless flaming blade beams that were dozens of meters long flew out. Under the enhancement of the half-incomplete Sabre intent, the blade lights became sharper. None of the disciples and deacons of the inner sect could withstand any of the flaming blade lights. However, at this moment, hundreds of thousands of blades of light had turned into a terrifying torrent, rushing towards Lin Xuan. It was obvious how powerful it was. On the other side, Lin Xuan's expression was cold. Not only did he not dodge these attacks, but he also even faced them head-on. The timing is perfect. Lin Xuan shouted and clapped his hands. Shocking wave palm. In an instant, an endless amount of power poured out, turning into waves that spread in all directions. Clear and crisp sounds were heard. The sound of air being shattered could be heard. It seemed that this power was far inferior to the endless flame blade light that shot out from the sea of fire. But in the next moment when the two collided, an ear-splitting explosion that sounded like thunder rang out. At the instant the two attacks collided, those incomparably powerful flaming, Blade lights actually shattered. Some sort of invisible force appeared to have crushed them. They were completely unable to withstand a single blow. Even the sea of fire that was originally surrounding them seemed to have met its nemesis. The sea of fire actually retreated, with Lin Xuan at its center. Lin Xuan's two palms were able to easily block Hu Yuanhua's attack at this moment. This scene made the disciples and deacons, who had already retreated several hundred meters away from the square, see it and be stunned on the spot, not daring to believe it. Hu Yuanhua's attack, after activating the two great concepts, had become several times more powerful. After the aftermath of the attack dispersed, they had no choice but to retreat once again. However, Lin Xuan's two palms actually pushed back such a potent attack. The gap between them was so huge that it seemed like they were not on the same level. This scene left everyone unable to believe it. On the other side of the arena, Hu Yuanhua was also shocked. He didn't expect Lin Xuan to be so powerful. This had far exceeded his expectations. Chapter 106. Lin Xuan's Strength. When Hu Yuanhua saw this scene, he was completely stunned. He never thought that his all-out attack would have no effect on Lin Xuan. Not only did he not defeat Lin Xuan, but he was even able to counterattack. Only now did he know how terrifying Lin Xuan's strength was. Lin Xuan's strength had already surpassed his. His strength had far exceeded his. Lin Xuan only casually struck out two palms, but it was enough to neutralize his full strength attack. Their strengths were not on the same level at all. At this moment, Hu Yuanhua did not have the time to think too much. The power brought by Lin Xuan's two palms destroyed everything in its surroundings. After that, the power of these two palms continued to attack Hu Yuanhua. A cold sweat broke out on Hu Yuanhua's back, and a strong sense of oppression rushed towards him. How can Lin Xuan be so strong? Hu Yuanhua's body trembled slightly, and his eyes were filled with fear. He knew very well that Lin Xuan's attack could seriously injure and cripple him. In fact, the possibility of him dying on the spot was even higher. Although he would lose all his face if he lost to Lin Xuan this time, as long as he could think of a way in such a short period of time, he would be able to resolve this crisis. He still had a chance to rise. But if he died here, then he had no future, let alone rise. The sect seniors attached great importance to Lin Xuan. They wouldn't punish Lin Xuan for his life. His death is now worthless. Thousands of thoughts flashed through Hu Yuanhua's mind. Not long after, Hu Yuanhua made a decision. The next moment, Hu Yuanhua endured the intense pain coming from his body and used the last true qi to slash out. A powerful flame blade light flew out. However, Lin Xuan's palm force instantly shattered this blade light. Hu Yuanhua used this force to turn around and retreat. Not long after, he retreated a few hundred meters. The palm force continued downward and finally landed on the arena. An explosion that resounded through the sky rang out. The entire arena instantly shattered, with countless crushed stones flying in all directions. Smoke and dust filled the entire gambling arena in an instant. The explosion struck a large number of inner sect followers outside the square, swelling and hurting their eardrums. A trace of blood flowed out of the corners of their mouths. Immediately after that, a large amount of crushed stone shot out like arrows. The crushed stones pierced through the bodies of many disciples, causing them to suffer serious injuries once again. The scene fell into chaos. All kinds of wails were heard. Not far away, Hu Yuanhua walked down from the arena. His face was pale, and he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. His clothes were dyed red. His qi had become incomparably weak. Obviously, he had suffered a serious injury. It didn't take long for the crowd outside the square to recover from their chaotic state. Their eyes were fixed on the competition. At this time, a gust of wind blew past, sweeping away all the white smoke and dust in the air. In the next moment, the scene in the gambling arena appeared in front of everyone. At this moment, the arena that had previously been used for the duel has already turned into ruins. The entire square was filled with cracks, as if it were going to split open at any moment. Lin Xuan stood in the arena and watched everything calmly. His clothes were very clean. Not even a speck of dust could be seen on them. His face was expressionless, as if nothing had happened just now. Then the arena fell into silence. Everyone's mouths were wide open, and they stood rooted to the ground, unable to regain their senses. Their minds were a blur, and they couldn't even think. They were already so shocked that they couldn't speak. After a few breaths, someone finally realized what had happened. Suddenly, many people gasped. The audience on the field began an intense discussion. This is too scary, isn't it? Even the gambling arena has become like this, and the arena has been destroyed. This is too scary. Are you sure this is a duel between the disciples of the inner sect? Why is the destructive force so shocking? This is Lin Xuan's strength? He is too strong. Everyone exclaimed. Their attention was focused on Lin Xuan, and their eyes were still wide open in shock. Lin Xuan and the strong list expert of the inner sect, Hu Yuanhua, were confronting each other. Initially, they thought that this would be an intense and exciting battle. And the final result would be Hu Yuanhua's victory. After all, the strong list was set up for the strongest disciples of the inner sect. Every strong list warrior had true potential. Lin Xuan, on the other hand, was only a new disciple who had reached the beginner level in less than 2 months, although he had created countless miracles and broken all kinds of records. However, he had only been cultivating for a short period of time and had yet to grow. He himself was only an ordinary disciple of the Qi transformation stage inner sect. It was already considered pretty good that he was able to exchange a few blows with a strong list expert like Hu Yuanhua. He couldn't last long, and it was even more impossible for him to win. However, they had never expected that the result would be the complete opposite of what they had expected. Hu Yuanhua initially tried to probe him, but Lin Xuan easily resolved the situation. Immediately after that, Hu Yuanhua didn't hold back anymore. He unleashed his full strength and even unleashed 2 great concepts, charging towards Lin Xuan. However, it was still useless. Lin Xuan only used 2 palms to counter Hu Yuanhua's strongest attack. In the end, Hu Yuanhua was seriously injured. Lin Xuan's 2 attacks had destroyed the entire gambling arena. The arena had also turned into countless pieces of broken stone. However, Lin Xuan's aura stayed the same. He wasn't injured at all. The gap between them was as wide as a ravine between heaven and earth. It was unimaginable. This shocked everyone, and they couldn't believe it. Even if this happened right in front of them, it was like a dream. They felt that this wasn't real. At this moment, they finally saw how terrifying Lin Xuan's strength was. 2 of his attacks had severely injured the strong list expert, Hu Yuanhua. He had even destroyed the entire gambling arena. More importantly, Lin Xuan had used the 10% sword intent before. But this time, he didn't even use the concept. He had such a terrifying power just by relying on his martial arts. Even if his strength was not at his successor's level, it was sufficient for him to be ranked at the top of the strong list. He might even reach the top 10. Chapter 107. Shock. Hu Yuanhua laid weakly on the ground in front of everyone. Although he felt pain all over his body, he still did not faint. Hu Yuanhua looked at Lin Xuan, who was standing on the rubble. He was stunned. His eyes were wide open and his heart was filled with shock. I am still too arrogant. Or rather, I have underestimated Lin Xuan. Hu Yuanhua laughed at himself. Initially, he planned to challenge Lin Xuan as an elite disciple, because Lin Xuan was an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. He wanted to use Lin Xuan's reputation to improve his own reputation. In the end, he didn't expect Lin Xuan's strength to be even more terrifying than the rumors. After that, he unleashed all of his strength. However, Lin Xuan quickly overcame him. In fact, if he hadn't stopped attacking earlier, he might have died on the spot. Only now did he realize that he had overestimated himself. He actually wanted to challenge Lin Xuan. Furthermore, not only was he injured, but he might also suffer endless ridicule. At the same time, he had also seen how terrifying Lin Xuan's talent was. As an elite disciple, he had already known that Lin Xuan's cultivation base was at the 7th level of Qi transformation stage before the challenge. He had combined his cultivation base. He looked like a normal disciple of the inner sect. But even so, Lin Xuan's strength was very strong. Even someone like him, who was ranked on the strong list and had hopes of obtaining the true inheritance in the future, was easily defeated. This was absolutely shocking. On the surface, Lin Xuan's identity was just that of an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. Even though the sect's experts did not accept him as a disciple, the upper echelons held him in high regard. The special treatment he received was limited. In terms of cultivation resources and martial arts techniques, he could at best be compared to the elites of the inner sect. Lin Xuan should not be able to compare with an elite disciple like him. However, Lin Xuan still had such strength. There was only one reason for this. It was because of Lin Xuan's talent. Talents were not only divided into auxiliary talents like cultivation talent, but also strength, speed talent, and swordplay talent, which could be used to boost one's combat strength. Lin Xuan was just an ordinary disciple of the inner sect who lacked cultivation resources and did not have a lot of martial arts skills. His cultivation base was only at the 7th level of the Qi transformation stage, and he had just barely stepped into the late Qi transformation stage. However, Lin Xuan's combat strength was extremely powerful. Lin Xuan would be able to easily crush even a condensation spin stage peak like his. It could be seen that his talent in all aspects was very high. This was truly shocking and unimaginable. Also, he remembered the rumors about Lin Xuan a few days ago. At the same time, in the gambling arena, Lin Xuan was also a Qi transformation stage level 4. In order to deal with the elite of the inner sect, Chen Xiao, who was a condensation spin stage level 3, he not only used his sword technique, but also the 10% sword intent. But now, not only did he not use his sword intent, but he also didn't even use his treasured sword. Lin Xuan's 2 martial arts easily shattered his all-out attack. The difference in strength between them was too great. The gap between them was even greater than 10 times. There were only a few days of difference between the 2 times. Lin Xuan's strength had soared to such an extent. This showed how terrifying Lin Xuan's talent was. This shocked Hu Yuanhua even more. Only now did Hu Yuanhua understand that it was true that Lin Xuan was hailed as the number 1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect. Not only was this sentence not exaggerated, but it had also even underestimated Lin Xuan. In his point of view, Lin Xuan was not just the number 1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect. He had even surpassed all the geniuses of the Drifting Cloud sect in the past few decades. In recent decades, not to mention the Drifting Cloud sect, no one in the entire Kangyuan country has had the strength of Lin Xuan. When Hu Yuanhua thought of this, he was even more shocked. He couldn't control himself anymore. At this time, in the gambling arena, Lin Xuan was quietly standing on the ruins. He was also staring at the scene in front of him in a daze. He didn't expect things to turn out like this. Originally, after Hu Yuanhua unleashed all of his strength and unleashed the 2 great concepts, its power had already far exceeded that of a condensation spin stage peak. He didn't dare to underestimate it. Coincidentally, after cultivating the golden scale barbaric elephant arts, the strength of his body skyrocketed. He wanted to test out how strong his current strength was. Therefore, Lin Xuan unleashed his physical strength with both palms. He felt that he should be able to withstand Hu Yuanhua's attack. Even if he couldn't block Hu Yuanhua's attack, he could still take the opportunity to retreat with his body intact. However, he never thought that the strength of his current physique was far beyond his imagination. He struck out 2 palms. The energy that poured down was as boundless as the ocean. Nothing could stop it wherever it passed. Hu Yuanhua's full force attack was completely defenseless. It even scared Hu Yuanhua so much that he didn't dare to resist anymore. He borrowed the force of the backlash to escape. Even so, Hu Yuanhua was still seriously injured. And after this force was unleashed, it was just too strong. Even as its master, he couldn't fully control it. In the end, he could only allow this surging power to land on the arena. As expected, the gambling arena, which was supposed to be able to withstand the condensation spin stage peak battle, did not have any strength to resist. It collapsed with a loud bang, turning into a pile of rubble and ruins. Even the square below had many cracks in it, like a spider web. It was as if a huge earthquake had occurred here. It was extremely shocking. Lin Xuan looked at all of this. He couldn't believe that he had done all of this himself. Only now did he know how terrifying the golden scale barbaric elephant arts were. Not to mention the spirit opening stage, there weren't many condensation spin stage warriors who could withstand his attack. And he was only a 7th level of Qi transformation stage warrior, but he already had this kind of strength. More importantly, he hadn't even reached the beginner level yet. It seems like the origin of the golden scale barbaric elephant arts is much greater than I thought. Lin Xuan sighed in his heart. After this battle, he realized that the Golden Scale Barbaric Elephant Arts was definitely not a rank 8 martial art, but a higher ranked martial art. Furthermore, this was not something that the Scorching Sun domain could have. The origin of this skill was beyond his imagination. The only fortunate thing was that he had cultivated the Golden Scale Barbaric Elephant Arts. He believed that such a powerful martial art would be his trump card for a long period of time in the future. After a while, Lin Xuan let out a long breath and recovered. He turned around and walked out of the original ring that had turned into rubble. He looked at the crowd outside the square. At this time, the disciples and deacons gathered outside the square were also paying attention to Lin Xuan. The shock in their hearts had already reached an extreme point. However, they had regained their senses at this moment. At this moment, they saw Lin Xuan looking at them. The judge from before walked out and announced loudly, "Lin Xuan has won this gambling match." Chapter 108. On the strongest list. As soon as the judge finished speaking, the crowd went into an uproar again, and the crowd couldn't help but sigh. The result of this gambling match exceeded everyone's expectations. At the same time, everyone knew that Lin Xuan's reputation would shake the entire sect from today onwards. Lin Xuan nodded slightly when he heard this. He took out his identity token and walked towards the judge. When the judge saw this, he at once understood Lin Xuan's intention. He waved his hand and commanded 2 inner sect disciples to help Hu Yuanhua up from the ground. Hu Yuanhua also knew what to do. He took out his identity token. When Lin Xuan walked over, he said in a deep voice, "Senior brother Lin, I lost this bet. I admit defeat. I will not deny the bet of 80,000 contribution points. It is just that I do not have 80,000 energy points in my hands right now. I only have 60,000. Do you think I can use some spirit stone as a supplement?" Hu Yuanhua's attitude was very low. He even called Lin Xuan senior brother. In fact, since Lin Xuan had defeated Hu Yuanhua in a crushing manner, his strength had already surpassed his. According to the unspoken rules of the martial arts world, the strong were respected. It was true that Hu Yuanhua should address Lin Xuan as his senior brother. However, Hu Yuanhua was ranked on the strong list, and his status and cultivation base were much higher than Lin Xuan's. Even though Lin Xuan's strength had surpassed Hu Yuanhua's, ordinary martial artists would have some grudges against him and would not be willing to admit such a thing. However, Hu Yuanhua said it very freely. He sincerely admitted that Lin Xuan was his senior brother from the bottom of his heart, and his attitude was sincere. Because after this battle, he had seen Lin Xuan's strength. He found that Lin Xuan was even more powerful than the rumors. Even the reputation of the #1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect might not be worthy of Lin Xuan. His future potential was limitless. Even the current him could not compare to Lin Xuan. He naturally didn't dare to offend him. He wanted to please him in every way possible. Therefore, he was willing to call Lin Xuan his senior brother and let go of his so-called useless pride as an elite disciple. When Lin Xuan heard this, he also glanced at Hu Yuanhua in surprise. He did not expect Hu Yuanhua's attitude to change so quickly. However, this had nothing to do with him. He was not bothering him. It was Hu Yuanhua's suggestion that was not bad. He just happened to lack the spirit stone for cultivation. Sure. How many spirit stones do you have left? After that, Lin Xuan asked. 6,000. I only have 6,000 substandard spirit stones left. Hu Yuanhua replied truthfully. I happen to have a shortage of spirit stone. Using spirit stone to replenish the bet is naturally not a problem. I'll take all 6,000 spirit stones. However, in terms of the exchange rate, how much do you think is suitable? After saying that, Lin Xuan looked at Hu Yuanhua. Hu Yuanhua revealed a charming smile and hurriedly said, since you need it, then take it. As for the ratio, 6,000 spirit stones were equivalent to 20,000 contribution points. Adding the remaining 60,000 contribution points to my identity token, which would be the best of 80,000 contribution points. Senior brother Lin, what do you think? 6,000 spirit stones in exchange for 20,000 contribution points. This ratio was much higher than the highest exchange rate privately circulated within the sect. Hu Yuanhua was clearly at a disadvantage. However, in order to curry favor with Lin Xuan, Hu Yuanhua could not care about these details. Alright, That's it. A satisfied look appeared in Lin Xuan's eyes, and he nodded slightly. He threw the identity token to the judge beside him. He could naturally tell that Hu Yuanhua was trying to please him. However, Hu Yuanhua had malicious intentions when he challenged him. At this moment, he didn't care about Hu Yuanhua's petty actions. Very soon, the referee was done. He returned the identity token and a storage ring to Lin Xuan. After Lin Xuan received it, he looked at the crowd, not far away. He looked at a few condensation spin, stage peak deacons and smiled as he said, "Deacon Lu, Deacon Sun, I have been short of spirit stone recently. May I ask if I can use contribution points to exchange for some spirit stone?" Because Lin Xuan had crushed Hu Yuanhua, one of these elite disciples, he completed the exchange, not long after. In order to curry favor with Lin Xuan, the few deacons even changed the exchange rate to the same as Hu Yuanhua. Regarding this, Lin Xuan naturally didn't mind accepting all of them. A few minutes later, the 120,000 contribution points in Lin Xuan's hand were successfully exchanged for 18,000 substandard spirit stones. Including the 70,000 contribution points and 24,000 spirit stones that he originally had. Lin Xuan nodded his head in satisfaction. This time, he could cultivate for a period of time to increase his strength. In addition, once everything that happened in Gambling Arena was spread out, it would shake the sect once again. At that time, he would be able to obtain a large number of energy points. He had gained a lot from this trip. The only pity was that he could only do this once. He could not do it again. After all, he had exposed too much of his strength this time. He estimated that his current strength was considered pretty good within the strong list. If he came to the Gambling Arena again, no one would dare accept or challenge him. Because they would definitely lose, without a doubt. No one would be foolish enough to find trouble with him. He wouldn't be able to earn energy points and cultivation resources in the Gambling Arena anymore. Regarding this, Lin Xuan could only sigh in his heart. There was no other way. Very quickly, Lin Xuan calmed down again. If this place could not be done, he would find another place. After his strength increased, would he have to worry about not finding a way to earn cultivation resources? After that, Lin Xuan planned to leave Gambling Arena. He had a purpose for coming here. He didn't come here for the Gambling Arena. He wanted to see if the other alchemy halls could replicate the related talent and choose a martial arts occupation that could earn a large amount of cultivation resources. However, when he passed by the Gambling Arena and saw that the Gambling Arena had changed a lot, he stopped. Now that he had earned a lot, it was time for him to leave. However, at this moment, a deacon named Chen called out to Lin Xuan. "Nephew Lin, please wait a moment." Lin Xuan stopped and looked at him with a puzzled look. Deacon Chen nodded slightly at him and walked towards Hu Yuanhua, who was not far away. Hu Yuanhua was surprised for a moment, and then he understood. He smiled bitterly and took out a black badge with silver edges and a small book the size of a palm. He handed it to Deacon Chen. "Senior brother Lin, Deacon Chen, I accidentally forgot about it. You can take this strong list token and strong list register." Deacon Chen took it and handed it to Lin Xuan. He explained. "This is the sect's rule. The strength of the inner sect's strong list is respected. If any elite disciple loses, the winner will take their place on the strong list. Nephew Lin, you have defeated Nephew Hu in front of everyone in the Gambling Arena. According to the rules, from now on, you are the new elite disciples, ranked 28th on the strong list. You will be able to enjoy all the benefits of being an elite disciple." Lin Xuan's expression froze, and then a smile appeared in his eyes. He nodded, took the token, registered, and said, "Thank you very much." If it wasn't for him reminding Lin Xuan, he really wouldn't have known about these things. Chapter 109. Respect. Lin Xuan thanked him. If he hadn't mentioned it, he really wouldn't have known about these things. He, a beginner, had only been here for less than 2 months. He had only been in the inner sect for about 10 days. He didn't know much about the rules of the sect. He had never thought that there would be such a rule of the strong list in the inner sect. The strong were respected. As long as the disciples of the strong list were defeated, they would be replaced. No matter the cultivation, status, and identity of the winner, Lin Xuan took the strong list token and the small book and roughly looked at them. The strong list token was silver in color, and its main body was black. It was heavy and of good quality. The word strong list was engraved on the front, and the word 28 was engraved on the back. These three words stood for the ranking. As for the small booklet, it recorded the names of the various great disciples that were ranked on the strong list as well as some relevant introductions. After which, Lin Xuan placed it in the storage ring. A smile flashed across his eyes. Putting everything else aside, this elite discipleship identity was second only to the true disciples in the Drifting Cloud sect. Even the elders of the Spirit Opening Stage inner sect couldn't be underestimated. There were also benefits in all aspects. Lin Xuan was also quite satisfied. He also did not expect that there would be such an unexpected gain in this gambling match. At the same time, he also learned some of the strong list's rules. A few ideas that could earn cultivation resources burst out of Lin Xuan's heart. However, it was not convenient for him to do it for the time being. He would wait for a while and decide according to the situation. Seeing this, the surrounding disciples suddenly became noisy. That's right, the inner sect strong list has such a rule. Yeah, if it wasn't for Deacon Chen mentioning it, I would have forgotten about it. It can't be helped. Although there is indeed such a rule, in the past, no disciple had ever succeeded in challenging the senior brother strong list. In fact, there were very few disciples who dared to challenge the senior brother strong list. After all, those who could be ranked in the strong list were, at least condensation spin stage peak warriors. Even ordinary condensation spin stage peak warriors might not be able to withstand a few moves. The rest of the inner sect disciples, ordinary disciples, and the elites of the inner sect are no match for the senior brother strong list. They wouldn't dare challenge him. Senior brother strong list's dignity was also set up. Over time, many people subconsciously neglected this rule. That's true. If it weren't for the abnormal senior brother Lin, this rule really wouldn't be useful. From now on, senior brother Lin Xuan will no longer be an ordinary disciple of the inner sect. He will leap over and become a strong list expert. He will be above the elites of the inner sect. Does this mean that senior brother Lin Xuan has set another record? Again, I don't even know how many records senior brother Lin Xuan has set. It has only been less than 2 months. He's too scary. The disciples discussed amongst themselves, sighing with emotion. They were even more shocked by Lin Xuan's terrifying talent. This time, it allowed Lin Xuan to obtain another wave of energy points. Lin Xuan also slightly nodded his head. He heard the discussions around him and finally understood why Hu Yuanhua was stunned when Deacon Chen looked for Hu Yuanhua. That was because even though this rule existed, it could not be implemented under normal circumstances. This rule was ignored. As an elite disciple, he didn't notice it. That was why he forgot about this rule from the beginning. After Deacon Chen's reminder, he finally understood. Lin Xuan did not mind this at all. On the contrary, he was very happy. He had set a new record. When the sales department spread out, he would have even more energy points in his account. Lin Xuan would naturally not care about those details. After that, Lin Xuan thanked him again. After that, he walked towards the exit of the gambling arena. All the disciples took the initiative to retreat to the sides, opening up a wide path. They looked at Lin Xuan with reverence in their eyes. The strength that Lin Xuan had displayed was already at the top of the inner sect. He was worthy of their respect. Not long after that, Lin Xuan's figure disappeared from everyone's sight. Only then did everyone withdraw their gazes. They looked at the destroyed gambling arena, but the shock in their hearts still hadn't calmed down. After making some noise, they left. What happened in the gambling arena today was a huge event, and it was enough to shake the entire sect. They couldn't wait to spread the news. A few minutes later, only a few judges were left on the scene. They looked at the cracked gambling arena and looked at each other with bitter smiles in their eyes. Since the gambling arena had become like this, the original bet could no longer continue. There was no need for them to stay. After that, they left as well. They had to report this to the higher-ups. Compared to the dissemination of those disciples, the words of these deacons were more convincing. At the same time, this was also their duty. They needed to discuss how to repair the gambling arena and some other matters. As for the culprit who destroyed the gambling arena, Lin Xuan, he naturally wouldn't receive any punishment. When the sect seniors found out about this, they would reward Lin Xuan and value him even more. This was because the talent that Lin Xuan displayed was much stronger than before. In fact, no one in the entire sect could compare with him. They wouldn't punish Lin Xuan because of a gambling arena. Not long after, the gambling arena was empty. Occasionally, when some passing disciples saw the scene in the gambling arena, they were also stunned on the spot. In a building a few thousand meters to the east of the gambling arena, there was an old man in white and a middle-aged man standing by the window. They were Wang Zufeng and the sect leader from the Drifting Cloud sect. Wang Zufeng had given Lin Xuan the golden scale barbaric elephant arts in the martial arts pavilion. Both of them looked in the direction of the gambling arena, their eyes filled with deep thoughts. Is this the power of the golden scale barbaric elephant arts? It can actually make a 7th level chi transformation stage warrior use this kind of power. The sect leader murmured. This is because Lin Xuan used it. That's why it has this kind of power. Lin Xuan has far surpassed the others, including me. Furthermore, it took him a few days to cultivate the golden scale barbaric elephant arts to such a high level. Lin Xuan's talent has also far exceeded mine. I estimate that Lin Xuan should be the number 1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect and even the entire Kangyuan country. Wang Zufeng replied with a surprised and worried expression on his face. That's right. Lin Xuan's talent was extremely high. He had already surpassed all the warriors in Kangyuan country. But so, what? He had already cultivated the golden scale barbaric elephant arts and could no longer stop. The sect leader sighed and looked at Wang Zufeng deeply. He even had a chance to become the number 1 genius of the Drifting Cloud sect, but he was ruined just like that. He felt that it was a pity. Wang Zufeng quickly explained. Sect leader Lin Xuan's talent is extraordinary. He is far from what those people could compare him with. Maybe he can break that shackle. I hope so. The sect leader sighed and looked at Wang Zufeng coldly. Since Lin Xuan has already reached the elite disciples, I will increase his cultivation resources by 5 times. However, the sect will only give him 3 times the number of resources. You will have to bear the other 2 times the number of resources. You were the cause of this. You have to pay a price for this. Yes, sect leader. Wang Zufeng smiled bitterly and did not say anything else. Chapter 110. Alchemy Talent. Lin Xuan had no idea what had happened after he left the gambling arena. At this moment, he was walking straight towards Pill Refining Hall. Not long after that, he arrived at Pill Refining Hall. The Pill Refining Hall was one of the important halls of the inner sect and even of the entire sect. Not only was the Pill Refining Hall in charge of refining pills, but they were also in charge of selling them. The land it occupied was vast, and it was far from what the outer hall could compare with. Its decorations were also much more extravagant and magnificent. A large number of people came and went, and this also showed the prosperity of the Pill Refining Hall. Lin Xuan glanced around, then strode in. What he saw was a spacious hall. There were several wide passageways inside that led to different rooms. Some were pill refining rooms, some were selling pills or spirit medicine cauldrons. Lin Xuan walked around for a while. When he heard the commotion around him, he walked into one of the passages. In a short while, he arrived at a spacious room. It took up more than 1,000 square meters of space. The room was very noisy. The disciples of the inner sect were talking animatedly around the room, making it seem very lively. In the middle was a tall and slender young man in black clothes. In front of him was a large pill furnace, and he was concocting some kind of pill. Zhang Chen is indeed worthy of being ranked 23rd on the Azure Yang board. He is the number 1 alchemist genius of the sect. He is still a condensation spin stage, but he is already a spiritual rank alchemist. He is already so proficient in refining rank 5 high-grade medicinal pill and spirit gathering pill. That's right. The spirit gathering pill is the most valuable and also the most difficult pill among all rank 5 high-grade medicinal pills. Zhang Chen was only 22 years old, but he was able to concoct it so easily. There is no young alchemist who is stronger than him in the Drifting Cloud sect. With Mr. Zhang's alchemy talent, It wouldn't be difficult for him to become a true disciple after breaking through to the soul-opening realm. I'm curious if he can become an Earth-rank alchemist. That's very likely. Lin Xuan was mixed in the crowd. As he listened to the discussions around him, his eyes were filled with interest. For Zhang Chen to receive such a high evaluation was extraordinary. He wanted to know if Zhang Chen had the alchemy talent that he wanted. After that, Lin Xuan's eyes fell on Zhang Chen. Name: Zhang Chen. Cultivation: condensation spin stage peak. Talent: superior grade cultivation talent, superior grade alchemy talent, top grade strength and top grade speed talent. Top grade swordplay talent, top grade crimson fire talent, top grade green wood attribute talent, and top grade violent wind attribute talent. Mid grade earth talent. Martial art: golden flame technique, low rank 6, small completion, flame manipulation, low rank 6. Martial art: fire cloud sword art, rank 5, top grade great completion, and green essence palm, rank 5, top grade great completion. Explosive flame fist, rank 5, top grade great completion. Concept: 5% artistic conception of fire, 10% artistic conception of wood, half incomplete sword intent treasure. Green flame pill furnace, low rank 6. Spirit, it weapon. Lin Xuan looked at Zhang Chen's attribute panel and was shocked. He really has the alchemy talent. He has so many weapons and formations. Lin Xuan murmured in his heart, feeling pleasantly surprised. After that, he became very happy. He had come here for the alchemy talent, and he would never let Zhang Chen go. Lin Xuan's heart moved. You have consumed 30,000 energy points and successfully duplicated them. You have obtained the superior grade alchemy talent. You have used 30,000 energy points, you have successfully duplicated it, and you have obtained the flame manipulation, low rank 6, small completion. You have used 10,000 energy points. Duplication successful. You have obtained the 10% artistic conception off wood. In the blink of an eye, Lin Xuan had duplicated all the treasures on Zhang Chen's body. At this moment, there were many disciples on the scene, and their auras were mixed up. In addition, his attribute panel was one of the top treasures in the sect. Even if he fused a little more, his aura wouldn't change much. Immediately, Lin Xuan chose to use it. A weak, warm current flowed past. Congratulations to host for breaking through to the superior grade alchemy talent. Congratulations to host for breaking through to the 5% artistic conception of fire. In just a breath's time, Lin Xuan had finished absorbing the. Lin Xuan looked at Zhang Chen again. To be precise, he was looking at the pill furnace in front of Zhang Chen. Instantly, his eyes lit up. He had never come into contact with the Tao of alchemy before. He had never even come into contact with the relevant basics. However, at this moment, when Lin Xuan saw Zhang Chen's concoction process, he felt a sense of familiarity. He also felt that he knew how to concoct pills. So, this is the superior grade alchemy talent. Lin Xuan's heart was filled with excitement. Only now did he feel the power of the alchemy talent. In the past, he felt bored watching Zhang Chen concoct pills. But now, his feelings were completely different. It was as if he had seen through many of the mysteries, and he could even learn Zhang Chen's skill and experience in concocting pills. Of course, he did not know how to refine pills. This was only because his alchemy talent had suddenly risen to the superior grade. He now had a bit of blind confidence in himself. However, if he could replicate a few more alchemy talents, he might be able to concoct pills. In an instant, Lin Xuan felt a little excited. Since he had the alchemy talent, concocting pills was no longer a problem for him. Similarly, since he had mastered the pill Tao, he would no longer lack cultivation resources in the future. Lin Xuan was naturally delighted. At this time, Zhang Chen's refining process was also approaching its end. A ball of yellow flame flew out from within the pill furnace, and a round medicinal pill flew out. It landed on the jade plate on the side table, and a clear sound rang out. With a smile on his face, Zhang Chen placed the medicinal pill into a jade bottle. Holding the jade bottle, he said in a clear voice, rank 5 high-grade medicinal pill, spirit gathering pill. Quality first pattern, the highest bidder wins. When the disciples on the scene saw this, they at once clamored. Mr. Zhang is indeed worthy of being the number 1 alchemy genius in the sect. This spirit gathering pill actually has a cloud pattern. The spirit gathering pill has a great effect on late condensation spin stage cultivation. A spirit gathering pill with a cloud pattern has a better effect. I'll pay 8,000 contribution points to buy it. 8,000 contribution points can't buy a first pattern spirit gathering pill. I'll pay 10,000 contribution points. All the disciples were scrambling to bid. Lin Xuan stood in the crowd, his eyes flashing. From this, he could see that alchemists were easy to earn money for. At this moment, a loud shout was heard, and a wave of energy that far exceeded the ordinary condensation spin stage peak spread out. Wu Mengna shouted, 15,000. Who dares to fight with me? The crowd at once quieted down. At this moment, a slightly plump woman in red clothes walked in. The crowd of disciples looked at each other in dismay. They didn't dare to bid anymore, and they kept stepping back. It was obvious that they were very afraid of this woman in red. Wu Mengna, it's you again. Zhang Chen's eyes were filled with anger, but there was nothing he could do.